Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's eduWebinar. My name is Megan Miller, and I serve as the Chair of Operations and Special Projects for EDU Web. We're really happy to have you joining us for today's event, where we'll be talking about building student-centered strategies. This is our second EDU webinar, and going forward, we'll be offering several opportunities each month to hear from some of the remarkable members of the EDU Web community. We'll also be announcing our full schedule for the EDU Web Virtual Summit that we'll be having in early August, so keep an eye on your inbox for more details on that very, very soon. I'm lucky to be joined today by two folks whose names are probably familiar to you, Jeremy Tiers from Tudor Collegiate Strategies and Sue Campbell from ZeeMee. Each of us will spend a few minutes speaking to the topic of student-centered marketing and recruiting from our own perspectives, and then we'll open it up for your questions. So please feel free to send in your questions as we go along. And of course, we'd love to have you share your thoughts about this on social. Just use the hashtag EDUWebinar. And without further ado, I'm going to turn things over to Jeremy now. So take it away, Coach.
Appreciate that, Megan. I'm glad to be with everybody today. My name is Jeremy Tiers, and I'm the Director of Admissions Services for Tudor Collegiate Strategies. And we help colleges and universities with two big things. We partner with colleges and universities to help them with staff training. We do workshops that train college admissions counselors and enrollment marketers on how to be better recruiters and communicators, how to take a more student-centered approach, which I know is obviously the big theme of today's webinar. And then we also partner with schools to help them improve their enrollment communications, again, focusing on being more student-centered, improving personalization, and making all of these emails, letters, and other communications that happen throughout the cycle and the year more engaging. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Soup to introduce himself.
Hey everyone, as Megan mentioned, Harrison Campbell, friends and family and colleagues out there, those of you that know me, I've always been stuck with that nickname of Soup since childhood with the last name Campbell. And yeah, just super excited for the opportunity to chat with y'all today. I've basically spent my entire professional career using social media and leveraging social media to engage prospective students. You know, early on in my career, I'm a former high school teacher and coach, spent 10 years in higher ed enrollment management, working my way up to being a university dean of admissions. And for the past 2 years, I've worked for a social media company called ZeeMee, where I've primarily been in charge of managing marketing and brand. And so, yeah, so most of my life, my professional life has been educating, influencing students. That's always been the constant. And so super, super excited today to share with you a little bit about the power of building community on social media and being able to leverage that community to strategically impact your enrollment goals.
And with that, I will pull it back in. Soup, appreciate the handoff back to me. As we talk today, and Megan and Soup and I were going through this presentation, it's clear that now in 2020, more than ever before, we need to be more as colleges and universities and admission and enrollment marketing professionals, student-centered in the recruitment and communication that we do. It's about being more relational and less transactional. And this is something that, again, has never been more important, especially obviously during all of the things right now that are happening, both as we work through a global pandemic and as we work through all the other social justice issues in this country. Students want this college search process at all stages in all ways to be more about them. And so this quote that you're seeing on the screen right now, I hated feeling like just one of a billion. That came from a recent Tudor Collegiate Strategies survey literally a couple of months ago that I did with a college client. And I see constantly other quotes exactly like this in every single survey we do. And what students are saying is, I'm tired of feeling like I'm being mass marketed to. I'm tired of everything sounding like I should want to come to your college is perfect, there's nothing wrong with your school. I want you to recognize that I'm struggling with this process. I'm scared, I'm nervous, I'm worried. There are a bunch of things that I may or may not know how to do or may not need help with. And I need you to help guide me through this process as a college representative. And so what students need from you now, if we move forward to that next slide, are those 4 things right there. And they're the same 4 things, honestly, that colleges need to be providing up to this point and prior to COVID-19 anyways. Personalization by far and away is the #1 thing in every piece of survey research that we do at Tudor Collegiate Strategies, and we do a lot of it. Every time I lead a staff training workshop, every time we work with a college or university, we are surveying current and incoming students, and we're asking them about their experiences, not only during their college search, but as they transition to being a new student at whatever college or university they chose to attend. And personalization by far and away is the biggest thing students need from you right now. I'm going to give you some ideas here shortly on how to personalize the process more. But if we go back for a sec to that screen, the other couple things that students need as you're personalizing this process is they need you to be empathetic and they need you to be authentic. By empathetic, I mean they need you to recognize what's happening and where they're at in the world. And they actually want you, believe it or not, to ask them if you understand how to do it in a way that, again, makes it about them and is personal, how they're feeling about things as they go through this process. And in terms of being authentic, I'm specifically wanting you to think about all these different communications you have throughout the year. Think about the emails, the letters, the postcards, the text messages, the phone calls, the video chats on Zoom or whatever platform you use. Think about the language you use. Are you being conversational? Are you being too formal? Are you jumping back and forth? Understand that they need you and they want you to be more conversational because that's more authentic. And while you're doing those things, they want you to provide information about your school and they want you to encourage conversation. That means your calls to action shouldn't always be visit, apply, and deposit. If you're personalizing the process, there has to be more. And so now as we jump ahead to the next slide, what I really want to talk with you about before I give you some ideas on personalization is why those 4 things that I just showed you on the screen are so important. When you personalize the process and make it about the student, when you're empathetic and when you're authentic and you do that consistently as an admissions counselor or through the enrollment communications that your colleges send, you create trust, you help develop emotions in students and parents and families for that matter, and there are also feelings that get developed. And when it comes time for students to figure out which schools they're going to visit, which virtual visit they're going to do, where they're going to apply, and where they're ultimately going to deposit or commit, they go and they rely on those emotions and feelings that you either did or did not help create as you guided them through this process as a college and all of the different people at your college that were a part of that process. So it impacts decision making. So let's talk a little bit more about personalization and let me give you some ideas that I know you can take right now and will allow you to personalize the college search much more effectively if you're not already doing some of these things. In every piece of survey data that Tudor Collegiate Strategies has, we continue to ask, when you started your college search, who did you want to hear from first when it came to communicating with colleges? Overwhelmingly, and by overwhelmingly, I'm talking 75 to 80% of students for 5.5 years straight have said, I want the admissions counselor at a college I'm interested in to be the primary communicator and the first person that I communicate with. I don't want things that come from the Office of Admissions. When you do that, that screams mass and non-personal. That's exactly verbatim what students tell us in these surveys. And so when you establish the admissions counselor as that go-to person, as I refer it, and they become the primary communicator, that is another way to help you personalize the college search and stand out from other colleges and your direct competitors. Whenever you do the visit experience, whether it's on campus or because of everything we've been dealing with this spring and summer, and we know what fall travel will and will not possibly look like, you're going to be doing more online and more virtually. It needs to be more collaborative. Carnegie just had some great research over the weekend. If you didn't see it, you should Google it and find the PDF. And they just did some surveys with some rising high school seniors. And I'll just tell you, everything that found in their survey is everything we continue to see in our surveys, which is these visits, virtual and online, are starting to run together and feel very similar to what the on-campus experience at a lot of colleges and universities feels like. Which again, it feels like I come in, I basically sit down, you give me an information on a bunch of different things about your college. You tell me about scholarships, how to apply. You tell me about financial aid a little bit, and then we kind of go on our merry way after we visit with a couple of people, possibly our admissions counselor. When you do that and you don't make it a collaborative visit before, during, and after, it does not feel personal. You need to involve students more and ask them intentional questions ahead of the search, during the search, which could be by the counselors, their tour guide, faculty members if you're doing those type of meetings, and after the campus visit or after the virtual event to figure out how are they feeling, where do they need help, what do they want to know more about when it comes to your college and this entire process. And then the conversational language and tone that I referred to earlier when you communicate is so important. I always get asked by admissions counselors when I do meetings and Zoom calls over the last few months, but Jeremy, if I don't sound if I do sound conversational, won't that make me a little less professional? It's the exact opposite. Students tell us when you meet us where you're at and where we're at, you are more relatable and believable. And when you shift your tone or you do nothing but sound wordy and overly professional, it does not sound like something you have written for us. It sounds like something that someone wrote for us and put your name on. If you want to personalize the process more, you need to have separate communications for parents in 2020. Way too many colleges, and I know this because one of the things we do with colleges is we do communication audits. Very few colleges continue to have a separate stream of communication for parents that is non-transactional. Well, what do I mean by that? Parents, as we know, in most cases, are the #1 outside influencer for most students when they go through their college search. If you're going to engage the parents and figure out how they're feeling about things and what they need from you as a college before they're willing to let their son or daughter take the next step, you need to find ways to personalize those communications, and you need to find ways to loop them in and make them feel like a valued partner in the process. When I say explain the why and connect the dots, here's what I mean. Too many colleges don't do a good enough job of explaining why a student should apply, why a student should sign up for a visit, why this is better at our school than it might be other colleges you're looking at. And students then tell us in those surveys that I mentioned earlier, we struggle to understand why this school or this part of this school and their student experience is better here than it's better at school B, C, and D. The way you can do that effectively and personalize the college search is by storytelling. Show me and tell me about a student at your school who went through a similar type experience and ultimately chose to do whatever it is I'm considering doing. When you can do that for me, that not only personalizes the college search students tell us, but it makes me feel like you understand what I'm dealing with and you're trying to be helpful. And then being more intentional and direct with your questions when I do trainings is probably, outside of personalization, the #1 thing I end up spending a lot of time working with admissions counselors on. The worst question in the world that you can ask a student going through this search is, do you have any questions? They all have questions, but they don't know what they're supposed to ask. And when they don't know what they're supposed to ask, they default to, I don't want to say or do the wrong thing, so I'm going to say nothing. That's why it's so important for you to be more intentional and direct with your questions. And students also tell us they want you to be direct. You don't have to give them a bunch of fluff. Just talk to them about what you want to talk with them about, but connect the dots and help them understand why it should matter to them based on what's important to them and what they're looking for. And then those last 2 bullets, I talked earlier about the calls to action you use. An effective way to personalize the college search when it comes to calls to action is to ask a direct or intentional question at the end of an email, letter, phone call if you're leading a phone call, instead of just sending them to a link that, again, for the 13th, 14th, 15th time is encouraging them to sign up for your visit or to go fill out the application or to complete the FAFSA or whatever it might be. If you want to know why they haven't done something, you need to ask them a direct question about why they haven't done it. If you want to know how they're feeling about something, it's okay to ask them that direct question. And I'm going to give you a couple of questions here in just a minute, but always remember it's about the other person, whether it's a student or a parent, and not about your school. You will have more than enough opportunity to talk about your school, but you'll do it in a way that is helpful for them when you personalize and use some of these methods that I just gave you. So now when we jump forward to the next slide, a couple of things I also wanted to give you when it comes to questions. Because those questions are so important and being intentional and direct matters, as I said a few minutes ago, there's 2, 4, 6, 7 questions on this screen right now that as you start to work with this next group of students, rising seniors in the class of 2021, these are questions that you can either use as calls to action in your communications. You can ask them this when you're talking to them one-on-one over, a virtual visit, over the phone, via text, in person, if you start to do on-campus in-person visits again this summer. But these are some great questions that are personal and will also at the same time allow you as an admissions professional or you as a marketer trying to help your admissions team get a better sense as to what is this student feeling, what do they need from us, and what blanks can we help them fill in to help them figure out if our college is the right fit for them. And so when you ask those questions, you are going to have numerous opportunities to ask follow-up questions. And by follow-up questions, I mean you're going to want more context. They're going to give you an answer to whatever question you ask and you want to know more. Ask them about it. Ask them to help me understand that better. What does that mean? Why is that important to you, Jeremy? Talk to me about why you feel that way. They are more than happy, they tell us, students in surveys, to share when they believe like you're being helpful and you're personalizing the process and you're making it about them. That is how you're more student-centered when you go through this process. And the last screen I'll show you before I hand it off to Soup here is the same screen that I had earlier. When you personalize this process, when you're intentional with questions, you involve parents earlier in the process, you have one primary communicator, you talk in a more conversational tone, you're authentic, you meet them where they're at, you will develop trust faster, you will develop emotions and feelings that impact decision making. That is being more student-centered if you want to go through this process and make it more about students. And so with that, I'm going to hand it off to Soup Campbell.
Awesome, thank you, Jeremy. Before I start, I will just say this. Jeremy is a close personal friend. If you are on today and you have never personally worked with Jeremy, you or your team, I cannot strongly encourage you enough. He is someone that you want to be working with. Absolutely fabulous stuff. I learn from him every day and can't endorse him enough. So please, if you've never had a chance, definitely connect with Jeremy. He is fabulous to work with. And so for the next few minutes, what I'm going to do is shift gears a little bit. And again, as I mentioned earlier, I want to briefly focus on the power of building community, leveraging social media, and how that can impact your enrollment goals. And I'm going to have you think of it a little bit differently than maybe we've thought of it in years past. Social media is not new to us in higher ed. We've been leveraging it for years now. But maybe there's some things that we could do a little bit different than how we've been doing it through the years to be a little more effective with enrollment, especially in light of the times that we're currently in right now. So Liz, if you don't mind, let's just jump on into that next slide. So this is great. I absolutely love this. I used it in a webinar a few weeks ago, and I don't know, SJ will probably, I don't know if he'll get upset with me or not by kind of sharing this screenshot, but he's awesome. If you're on Twitter, give him a follow. But I think when he shared this tweet, it really, really sums up what a lot of us kind of are feeling and experiencing right now. And he says, are our students and their families becoming burned out with video conferencing? Have we oversaturated? Are there any alternatives? My gut is that as we move into junior recruitment, we'll need to pivot. Thoughts? And so, this is where we are right now with this problem of these things that we're experiencing and that we're going through. And some of those problems include things like, the possibility of reduced campus visits. We still don't know exactly what things are going to look like in the fall. You know, there's that uncertainty of, will we have fall travel? Will we be able to attend college fairs? Will parents, will parents want to, travel and try to get to a school and visit in person? You know, these are things that we know that we are kind of stressed about, as well as families are stressed about. Obviously, webinar fatigue. Every one of us, and students included, are extremely fatigued with what we've been exposed to with webinars and Zoom calls. One thing for me, I've been really fortunate over the past couple of years, working for ZeeMee, is that I have this bird's eye view of millions of student interactions on this social media platform. And over the past few months, one of the themes that we just see repeatedly shared from students is their frustration and their concerns of colleges having to move these things to Zoom classes or live stream webinars. I mean, obviously there's elevated financial concerns. That's always been there when we think about college and students going off to college. There's that idea of now that the value of a college education. I talked to a parent recently that was looking at an institution, a pretty expensive institution, and the thought was, we don't know that we really want to send our son, off to this school for, $60K a year for the Zoom classes. So there's all these things that we're dealing with. The list goes on and on. We could keep mentioning these things, but the thing here is there a different strategy? Is there a new approach that maybe we can think about in moving forward? And so next slide there, Liz, that's what we're going to dive into here a little bit. So now more than ever, we need to shift to a possible new strategy. Not only to enhance our ability to recruit students and reach our enrollment goals, but more importantly, as Jeremy was talking about, we need to be able to address these current concerns and fears that our prospective students and parents are experiencing. And so that's what we want to take a look at. And if there's one thing I can say, if there's really one thing that I want you to remember from today, it's this: prospective students want to connect with each other. That's something that we've really seen the past few years, is they really want to connect with each other and build friendships long before they arrive on your campus. And I think most of us we kind of know that, and I think we understand that, but I don't think all of us realize how powerful that is. And we fall into that trap of it's all about us. It's about my brand. It's about my institution. And I've got to, as Jeremy was saying, I've got to talk about us. I've got to be transactional. I've got to make sure I provide this information. When really what we're seeing is that prospective students, they want to connect with each other around your brand, and they want to build those friendships. And so I love to look at it, and I think, examine it kind of in this frame here, by looking at how things have changed through the decades. So, if we think about, how we met our future college classmates. When I went off to college in the mid 1990s, I really didn't meet my classmates until really the day I arrived on campus. It was kind of move-in day. There was a brief kind of convocation, a little quick orientation. And within the next day or two, you were off and running with classes. And that was when I was able to connect and meet with those students. We fast forward a decade, and you started seeing that it would happen the summer before classes would begin. And we still do this today. We have those summer new student orientation sessions. And we invite those students to come to campus. They meet with their future classmates. Yes, there's a lot of logistics. There's that important stuff that takes place to prepare them for the fall semester. But what is it that really happens in that new student orientation session? They meet their future classmates. They make friends. It's still an important yield piece, because the stronger those friendships are, the more likely that they realize, yes, this is my school and I'm 100% all in. If we go back, a decade ago, when Facebook was all the rage for young people, we realized that, wow, we could create this Facebook group. And when our students are accepted, we could invite them all to join this Facebook group. And this might even happen in their senior year of high school, and they could start making those connections. So we see it's getting earlier and earlier that we've provided ways for students to connect and build the friendships. Certainly Facebook is still being used today, but if we fast forward now and we look at our present time now, there are other ways that students are trying to find each other, connect with all of each other much earlier in the process, far earlier than when they're accepted, even when they're in that inquiry stage. So, you know, social media platforms like ZeeMee and Discord, or using GroupMe, Reddit, these are ways that students today are really trying to find each other, connect with each other long before they're ever going to set foot on campus. So next slide. So I'm going to share with you this concept. I love this. I love trying to make things kind of visual to kind of drive home a point, but it's what I call the concert concept, and it's be the venue. And so a little quote here that kind of sums up what I mean by this. For years we've used this strategy, that it's still a great strategy when we think about higher ed social media. Wherever students go, we will go. You know, for years, that's been one of the primary social media strategies for us in higher ed. You know, from Facebook years ago to TikTok today, we show up at what is like the latest concert or that social media platform, trying our best to look as relevant as we can and to have students fall in love with our brand. But here's the little secret. Students want to connect with each other far more than simply connecting with us. And that's why it is much more powerful to own the concert venue rather than being another face in that crowd. Okay, so let's apply, let's think about that. Let's apply that traditional higher ed social media strategy of going wherever the students go to this concert concept. You know, we learned that thousands of students are say at this concert where we're, you know, TikTok is the headline band. So if all the students are going to be there, then we rush to purchase our ticket, and we want to show up and be there as well. You know, we arrive at this concert where we're fully decked out in our brand, and we're trying really hard to get students to notice us. But when you think about it, they really didn't come to this concert expecting to connect with us. You know, maybe by the end of the night, we get some likes and follows, and we're kind of feeling good. You know, but after attending a few more of these concerts, we think to ourselves, are we really making any significant impact for enrollment by being at this concert? You know, maybe what we should do is we should just purchase advertising. That's going to be our key. So our brand will now be visible on the tickets or on the stage, and students will definitely want to connect with us because now we're saturating them with our brand visually through kind of advertising. And so we try that approach. But this is one of the best things that ever happened to me back when I was a dean of admissions, and it was an interaction I had with my vice president. We were doing some really cool, amazing, innovative stuff, leveraging Snapchat at that time to engage prospective students. And I was really proud and excited of all the things we were doing. And he said to me this, he said, "Soup, that's great. Tell me which of those students have signed up for a campus visit. How many of those students have submitted an application? Show me how this Snapchat thing you're doing is reducing summer melt for us. You know, are any of these students connecting with each other?" And for the first time, I kind of realized, wow, those are really hard questions for me to answer, even though I knew we were doing some great stuff leveraging Snapchat at that time. And so that was a real eye-opening experience for me. And I think, you know, once you realize, you know, that you know, enrollment isn't being necessarily significantly impacted by just being another face in the crowd at one of these concerts, you know, you begin to question those things, and you question the value and the ROI of spending advertising money, you know, for that concert, you know, and you can't truly answer those important enrollment questions from the VP about attending the concert. You know, so then you're left with, well, Soup, what are you telling us? What should we do? And the big thing I want to stress is I'm not at all saying you should not continue to do those things, because they're really important. They're really fun. They are great for kind of top of the funnel brand saturation, even if they don't truly move the needle when it comes to enrollment. But I do believe there's a more powerful strategy, and that's why I call be the venue. You want to be the venue. And so, you know, utilize a social media platform that allows you to own the venue. Because when you own the concert venue, you control the narrative. When you own the venue, you now own the space where all of your prospective students want to hang out and connect with each other and build those super strong friendships that are formed and become powerful influencers that impact yield and melt. You know, you get to decide who gets the spotlight on the stage when you own the venue. You own all of the promotion and the ability to showcase your brand. You know, you now have a concert that really doesn't have a start and end date because students are there in your venue having fun, connecting, engaging with you 24/7. And when they are always with you at your venue, you will know their needs. You'll know their concerns and you can address them immediately. And like Jeremy talked about, it starts to become a lot less transactional and a lot more relational because you're there with them every single day. And so I think that's really the key that I want to drive home. And I'll share a couple things here in this next slide. And so here's just some examples of, if you think about, well, what does that look like? What can it look like with prospective students if I own the venue? And so I just wanted to share a few things. Like one of the things when you own the venue right now, you'll see your prospective students, you'll see your incoming students every day waking up and telling each other good morning and greeting each other and just chatting nonstop with each other. You know, when you own the venue, right now you'll know that your students are connecting with your orientation leaders and building relationships through them all throughout the summer, regardless of being able to visit campus or not for an on-campus, you know, new student orientation. You know, students want to receive important information when they want it and they want to get it then. And so, you know, having a venue where you're able to, there's something very important that you need to get to students and they can receive that through a push notification. You know, not having to rely on, you know, gosh, we've got to email them. I hope they'll check their email. I hope they'll see that this is important, that they need to sign up, that they need to do this. And again, to me, what's really, really powerful is when you own the venue, your prospective students actually become recruiters for you. And that screenshot there was kind of a neat, where you see a student that, you know, is maybe thinking about one school, but then because you've got the venue and you've got the community and you've built this amazing social space with all of your prospective students, you see how powerful it is for them to influence this other student that was still on the fence about, you know, what school to attend. And so those are the things that are super important, you know, to me and what I see when we think about leveraging social media and engaging prospective students. It's super important now more than ever. It's always been important, but I think now more than ever, when we struggle with, gosh, how can we actually physically visit, see these students in person, connect with them, now more than ever is an opportunity to really leverage social media and be the venue and have all of those prospective students connecting with each other when they're sophomores, when they're juniors, all the way through the process, and building those relationships with you. And so with that, just thanks again for the opportunity to chat with you guys today. I wanted to move quick so we can still get to the point where we have time for questions and answers at the end. But again, please don't hesitate to reach out, connect with me if you ever have questions about this topic or just social media in general. I'm super active on Twitter and LinkedIn, or you can always shoot me an email at harrison.campbell@zeemee.com. But again, thanks again for the time today.
All right, you guys are a tough act to follow, so thanks for all those insights. I really appreciate them. As I mentioned before, I'm Megan Miller. I have the privilege of serving as the Chair of Operations and Special Projects for EduWeb. Beyond that, I'm also a Senior Integration Consultant at RHB, where I partner with where I partner with schools to help them implement and optimize their use of CRM technology in recruiting and in I'm sorry, my sound is getting a little weird here, where I partner with them in recruiting in terms of how they leverage their CRM technology. If you follow me on Twitter, you're going to see me tweet a lot about Slate, a lot about tacos, and a lot about my various parenting mishaps. And as much as I'd love to jump into a robust discussion on tacos today, I'm actually going to spend a few minutes instead exploring the fundamentals of student-centered marketing. So Liz, you can go ahead to the next slide, please. And actually one more, actually, but I'll start by noting that I regularly see comments from folks in our industry about how, quote, marketing is simple. And to be honest, I find that to be a little bit flippant. Try telling that to a university's social media manager who's juggling 6 platforms, 4 marketing technology tools, 5 content calendars, 21 academic departments, 7 university divisions, and thousands of current students and alumni publicly offering their hot takes on everything that the school does. Not so simple. Maybe foundational marketing principles are simple, but actual practice takes a lot more strategy, adaptability, creativity, and coffee to pull off. So when we talk about student-centered strategies, it's a term that might have a very different definition depending on the institution, the message, and quite frankly, the day of the week. So we can move forward. For the next few minutes, I'd like to dig more into what student-centered means in this current climate. From my perspective, this comes down to 3 main behaviors: listen first, build and preserve trust, and engage empathetically. Let's start with listening. One of the 7 habits that Stephen Covey identifies in his bestseller, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which you have undoubtedly seen for sale at every airport bookstore ever, is, quote, seek first to understand, then to be understood. And while Covey was discussing this in terms of interpersonal behaviors in business, it's a statement that is fully applicable to our work as marketers as well. The past few months have felt like a Category 5 hurricane for all of us. Maybe a Category 6 hurricane, if that ever exists. That's pretty much what we've been going through. But as we've been responding to a global pandemic, a collapsing economy, and significant social unrest, it's been a lot to handle. We've been building this plane while we're flying it. We're overwhelmed, and we're facing a fire hose from pretty much everyone about what we should be doing, quote unquote, better. I know that the idea of having to listen more is a little bit exhausting at this point. But here's the deal, folks. We know that we can't lean on our standard marketing messages and tactics right now because this current environment is anything but standard. We need to pivot. But as every brand keeps telling us, we're in unprecedented and uncertain times. So there's no guidebook or white paper that's going to be there to tell us what the best practices are. We're figuring that out as we go along. So the only way we're going to be effective is if we take that time to listen. Next slide, Liz. Last month, the Education Trust conducted a survey of university students to explore the impact that the pandemic is currently having on their educational experience. While 87% of these students said they're confident that they'll return to their school in the fall, they have some significant concerns that should be top of mind for us as marketers. They were very eye-opening for me. 77% of them are worried about staying on track to graduate. 62% of them said they're facing financial uncertainty. And 73% of them are concerned about developing or worsening depression, anxiety, or other mental health challenges. Also tellingly, 36% of them acknowledged a fear of developing issues with substance abuse or addiction during the pandemic. This is a time when students are trying to understand if and how their specific needs will be met in this coming academic year. Right now, retention and attrition are major concerns for many schools. Our marketing efforts need to therefore be centered around answering the questions that are fundamental in our students' minds. Students are telling us exactly what they need to hear from us if we take the time to reflect on the story that we see in these numbers. Right now, there are some significant concerns about what resources are accessible to support their academic, financial, mental, and physical well-being. They lack confidence that what they need will be available. For new incoming students, these feelings are going to be amplified even further. Adding a major life transition into the mix of global pandemic / economic recession / social unrest is massive, regardless of a student's age or academic level of study. As marketers, we can serve our students by centering our messages around these key needs, but we can only do that if we hear what they're asking for. Next slide, please. Which leads us to trust, because we can say all the things our audience wants to hear, but if they aren't confident in us, none of it will matter. You can move A few months ago at a staff event, my coworker Elisa shared about how author Rachel Botsman defines trust, and it's stuck with me ever since. What is trust? It is a confident relationship to the unknown. Well, the unknown has never felt more prolific. So how do we inspire confidence from students? Next slide. For Gen Z in particular, trust is earned, not given. Morning Consult's State of Consumer Trust found that 63% of boomers agreed with the statement, I tend to trust the average American company. They have to do something bad to lose my trust. Only 38% of Gen Z respondents said the same. Instead, 42% of them said, I tend to not trust the average American company. They have to earn my trust. The report also found that young adults are 5 points more likely than all adults to say that it is very important that an organization has strong ethical values. Now, this is for many of us, our target audience. They won't take us at our word. They need to see us live things out. They demand transparency, and they aren't just going to hear what we say. They're going to verify that it aligns with what we do. At the agency where I work, we refer to our guiding principle as coherence, which basically comes down to ensuring that what you say about your institution actually aligns with what it is. Right now, for all of us in higher ed, a lot of what we've relied on for brand positioning, for marketing statements, and for imagery, it doesn't match with what we're able to offer. And it's unclear when we'll be able to shift back into our standard operating procedures. So what do we do in the meantime to build and preserve trust? We need to be honest with ourselves here. Being in this state of limbo can result in a lot of broken promises if we're not careful. And so the bottom line is this. If it's something you can't do right now, don't tell your audience that you can. And if we build our strategies for this coming year with our fingers crossed that everything is going to get back to normal, just be hopeful that we're just going to be able to jump right back into things the way they used to be, we're risking operating within a plan that does not align with reality. Students are going to notice this, and it's going to damage their perceptions of us. We need to say what we mean and mean what we say in order for our message to be received appropriately. And then, once we've done that, we need to engage empathetically. How do we connect with students so that our strategies are truly centered around them? Once we've heard what students need and created a framework that inspires their trust as we respond, it's time to demonstrate that we understand and care about what they've asked for. I love this quote from Megan Keeney Anderson. She's from HubSpot, and she sums it up really succinctly. Don't push people to where you want to be. Meet them where they are. Let's go back to that survey data we looked at a few minutes ago. The clear theme there was that was emerging is that there is a need to connect students with the resources that are available to them. We need to share how our academic services teams are serving our students and how students can access these resources. We should be collaborating with our financial aid and student service departments to communicate what is available to not just fund students' educations, but also provide them with that essential support they need to cover the essentials such as housing and food. If your student doesn't have anywhere to live and they don't have anything to eat, they're not going to be able to really be an active part of your university. Students need to know what mental health services exist, how to ask for help, and where to go where they're struggling. None of these topics are particularly sexy. They don't involve flying a drone over the quad to capture aerial footage. You're not profiling a faculty member's incredible new research or calling on alumni to share all their fondest memories of move-in day for you to retweet on social. But if we want our messages to be impactful for our current and prospective students, we have to center on these immediate needs. This is often the hardest part for us. We pour a lot of time, effort, and resources into developing our marketing plans, our content, and our visual assets. We're balancing the priorities and input of many departments and divisions. We have a lot of people to keep happy, and pivoting away from what we planned is frustrating. But our work is worthless if it doesn't match with what our audience is looking for. I'll conclude with this metaphor, which features some lovely original artwork by yours truly. It's a wonder that I did not go into graphic design, I know. Let's say you operate a sightseeing boat. Every day, you charter folks around, sharing with them the highlights that make your region unique and exciting as you take them to their destination. But one day, your passenger loses his footing and falls out of the boat. Now, your script says you're supposed to point out a famous landmark right now. So what are you going to do? Are you going to just turn up the volume on your speaker so that he can hopefully hear you from the water as you discuss its historic significance? Or are you going to turn around, throw him a life ring, and help him get back on board? Let's not leave our students treading water, hoping they'll catch up to us. Instead, let's center our strategies around listening to what they need, creating trust that it matters, and then responding in a way that proves that it's true. All right, and with that, we're going to go ahead and turn on our webcams now so you can see who these people are that are talking to you. And we are going to take some of your questions. So I'm going to go ahead there. Okay, so let's see here. I don't know if we've gotten any questions in yet, but I think that we could at least go ahead and start by talking about some of the questions that I have from just listening to the two of you guys talk. So I'll start with you, Soup. Can you share a little bit more? You talked about this concept of the concert being the concert venue. What are some ways that you are seeing some schools do a really good job with this right now in terms of helping to facilitate that opportunity to establish those relationships with other students instead of necessarily just trying to foster that relationship with the school itself?
That's a great question. And I think from my experience and what I've seen in the past is those of us that have worked in higher ed social media, we know these students are wanting to connect with each other, because a lot of times what happens is we get frustrated. I may have worked really hard to set up this class of Facebook group, and I've invited all of our admitted students in. And then I see them, they're all sharing like, let's make a Snap group, let's make a group on, let's make an Instagram, group, let's go here, go there. And then a lot of us in higher ed social media, a lot of times like we get frustrated because it's like, gosh, we can tell that they're wanting to have this community, but do they not want us to be part of it? We've tried to work to set it up. So it's always been this struggle through the years of, what platforms can really do this, and I love leveraging everything. Like I'm just as addicted to TikTok as anybody else, but the limitations, a lot of our current social media platforms that we use so much and we spend so much time and energy on, they're not even set up and designed with us in mind. They weren't built for us as higher ed professionals, as enrollment marketers, or they weren't really designed for us to feel like this platform would allow all of these prospective students to connect with each other. And Facebook is actually like great for it. Like that's one of the ones that you actually can do it. The struggle is can you get all of your prospective students to still love Facebook and want to join there? So yeah, it's always a struggle to find that way to build that community. And I work for ZeeMee, and that's what ZeeMee does, but I'm not here to say that's the only way you can do it. But when you can do that and you can create that community, that venue that you own, and you can get sophomores and juniors and seniors to opt in and be a part of that community, it's extremely powerful to have all those years of influence and those prospective students building those connections.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Prior to joining RHB, I actually spent 6 years as the overseeing enrollment communications at a university up here in Seattle. And one of the things that I constantly remember is that there's this importance of remembering that the students don't really care who I am. They don't really care who the director of admissions is. They don't really care who the vice president of enrollment is, but they really do care about a few people. They care about who they're going to sit next to in class, who they're gonna live with, and then also who are they going to learn from. So I'm curious, when you're thinking about how to personalize those communications, personalize those social experiences, as well as those more traditional marketing experiences, email, print, text messaging is now becoming more traditionally used. How would you recommend we leverage those folks on campus, the faculty members that students want to learn from, or those current students who have the inside scoop that they can offer?
Yeah, Jeremy, you tackle that one.
All right, no problem whatsoever. So a couple of things there. Megan's absolutely right in terms of who they want to connect with. The key that I see, or the key problem that I see when I do these comm audits that I talked about earlier, and I look at a college's enrollment communications, is you have all these different singular pieces in your enrollment communications plan that feel disjointed and don't flow, for lack of a better term, whatsoever. And so students are getting email from Harrison, email from Megan, letter from Jeremy, postcard about this event, and they're looking at it all, even if they look at it all, as we know they don't. And when they want to engage, they look and see, well, why should I engage? Why should I pick this school over that school unless I have some other reason? Because again, they have the unique major I want and the other schools don't, or they cost a lot less, or just some other built-in pre-existing value. So what I see is all these disjointed pieces, and students then get that email from Professor Tiers. They're looking at it going, I don't know who Professor Tiers is. Why am I getting this email? And then Professor Tiers, of course, that email's probably been there 2, 3, 5, 7, 9 years, never been changed, is overly wordy and has 7 links, and it just doesn't feel like it was written for them. And so they stop the moment they click open, or even if they read all the way through and go, okay, maybe it was helpful, but you know what, it probably wasn't. And even with peer-to-peer interaction, which is so important, like Soup talked about, there's still that fear. And by fear, I mean, I cannot overemphasize how much fear is running every single part of the college search process in a young person's brain.
Yeah.
And here's what I mean quickly by that. It's the fear of making the wrong decision. What if I say the wrong thing? You know, I don't want to sound stupid. How am I supposed to know this? I should probably know that, so I don't want to ask it. And when they're not sure what to do, they stop. And so if I'm getting a communication, even from a peer, and I'm looking at it going, okay, this is from Megan Miller, she's a sophomore, but like, I don't know Megan Miller, and why is she sending me this? A better way to do both those things, Megan, and to personalize it is have the communication, as I talked about, come from the admissions counselor, and have the admissions counselor set it up as a, hey, listen, I know you're looking at majoring in blank. And you know what? I know a lot of students when they come in as freshmen are worried about blank. So I went and talked to Megan Miller, one of our freshmen who I helped get here last year. And here's what Megan told me. She wanted me to tell you about that. That connects the dots, like I talked about, to students, gets them to understand why you're sharing what you're sharing, but it does it in a personal way. And then when you end a communication like that, which again could be a communication about a faculty piece too, didn't have to just be a student, with that admissions counselor asking a question as the call to action about whatever he or she just shared, that is way more personal and student-centered and effective than just sending a random piece with another link to visit, apply, or deposit.
Yeah. I have this question here from Catherine, who wants to ask, and this is a really relevant question right now, with the quote being the venue, are you concerned with monitoring or controlling the appropriateness of conversations had on there, especially when you're thinking about considering things like some public institutions and restrictions on how things can be controlled and things like that? What are some things you can say to that?
Yeah, we've been really fortunate with ZeeMee in that I think, you know, young people are pretty smart and they're pretty savvy, and I think we don't often give them enough credit. And the students that are on ZeeMee, they understand what this platform, they understand what their identity needs to look like on this platform. I mean, think about this, we're all the same way. The way I present myself on LinkedIn is a different way than I present myself on Instagram. It's a different way than I might present myself on Snapchat or TikTok. Like, we present ourselves differently based on kind of the norms of the platform. And so the young people that use ZeeMee, one, they know all of their colleges are there. They know, like, we can't just say whatever we want here. This isn't, you know, one of those platforms where we can just say whatever and no one's paying attention. And so really, we don't have a lot of issues with that. I mean, in 2 years, I can probably count, you know, on these 2 hands where we've had something that was really serious or an issue that needed to be addressed. But then, you know, we build all the features in for our college partners to be able to moderate, to be able to immediately take something down that they want. You know, our users can, like any other social media platform, can block, can report, and those things. So, you know, we're pretty fortunate. And I know for years, trust me, Megan as someone that did this for a long time for colleges and universities, as an earlier adopter, I mean, I got on Facebook when the people that I reported to were like, we can't do that. We, as a college or university, we cannot get into that Facebook thing. And so I've always been in those positions where you get that from, your higher ups, where you're so protective of this brand that we can't. What if they went on the tour and they didn't like what that one building looked like? And, should we allow them to say that? Well, absolutely. I mean, do you want to be real and authentic, or do you want to curate everything so that it's so fake and these kids see right through that? Or, just, allow the students to have a voice. I mean, when I was a dean of admissions, I would want to know if a student went on a tour and thought that building looked run down or something. Like, that's valuable information for me. I'm not trying to censor it and take, oh my gosh, just remove that right away. Anybody that sees that might think our campus is ugly. And so it's always that fine line. But certainly the more you give students a little bit of freedom to feel like they can really be open and express and talk about their concerns and things that are important to them, the more they'll embrace and be a part of that community. And then the more you're able to kind of leverage that and kind of move them in a direction that you want to move them in.
We are coming up on time. We have time for one more question, and Judy wins because she used the word slate in it, and everyone knows that if you say slate, Megan Miller pays attention. She asks, how can I personalize my communication when my strategic communications department is controlling all that communication using our signature in slate to send to all interested students, which is actually more of a question for you, Jeremy, than for me, but since it said slate, it got my attention anyway, so.
Yeah. And so can you repeat just part of that question in terms of what exactly?
Yeah, so I think we're talking about the idea that,
basically?
Yeah, with the idea that a lot of times it's that central marketing team or that central communications team that's controlling that message, but it's signed by that admissions counselor or that admissions representative who may want to have more of a voice in that, so it's actually more personal.
Yeah. So I think we all know about the importance of collaboration, and I would argue in 2020, if your admissions, your enrollment marketing, Marcom, whatever you want to refer to them as, your financial aid group, and your, for lack of a better term, tour guide program, event program, however you want to call that, operations, if those 4 offices aren't working collaboratively, you are farther behind your competitors who are, because more and more offices are, and without that, here's what happens. When I go lead these training workshops, one of the things I do is I do one-on-one meetings on day 2 with every single person that was a part of the training the day before. And that's the admissions counselors, that's enrollment marketing people, that's financial aid people. And one thing I hear consistently from counselors is, I don't know what's going on with my name on it half the time. I get a random phone call, I get this, and I feel like an idiot because I'm completely caught off guard and not prepared to help that student or that parent. It is super important when you put stuff into your CRM and you schedule campaigns to make sure that whether you have an admissions liaison who's working between the 2 offices, whatever it might be, that those counselors, if that's whose name is on those communications or that email campaign, know exactly what's going out when. Because when you do that, not only are they more prepared, obviously, to handle any engagement or follow-up questions they get, but I would argue it helps the enrollment managers or the admissions counselors manage their territories more effectively, because now they understand where to fill in the blanks as they're getting engagement. They know there's something coming from marketing and communications about topic X, whatever it is. And if they know that and they understand how to lead the conversation, if that makes sense, with that student or family, they actually then can use that as an advantage, for lack of a better term, because that collaborative, agreement or relationship is there with other offices on campus. But otherwise, again, it just feels completely disjointed if there isn't some structure that's been figured out ahead of time. So
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that I would say again comes down to listening. If you aren't talking to those admissions, those folks are the front lines. They're the ones who are hearing those questions. So if that strategic communications office doesn't know about those questions, they're not going to be communicating the relevant information to that student. So that collaboration is absolutely essential. I agree. Our time is up for today, so I do want to take a moment to say thank you to Jeremy and to Soup for joining us. It's really great to have you guys Thanks also to a few members of the EDU Web team who've been doing things behind the scenes. Liz Harder's been running things behind the scenes for us. Alexandra Modaferri, formerly Alexandra Simone, recently got married. She has been managing our social channels during the event, so thank you to both of them. And also thank you to all of you who did come and join us today. It was really great to have you be a part of our EDU webinar. We will be sending out a recording of this event soon, so that is available. I know that there's a question about that. So keep an eye out for that. We also are going to be sending out more information about our upcoming virtual summit, and we've got a lot of really great things planned for that you will not want to miss out on. So stay tuned for that. Thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to connecting with all of you again soon. Take care.